Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. Welcome to the Starseed Ministry. It is Monday, December 12th, 2022, and today the title of our transmission is Heaven is Within Us. I know it's so cliche and not very exciting, but in fact, it's very much true to our reality. So, welcome back, everyone. And of course, if you are new here, thank you for being here. And it's most likely the result of people who are consistently viewing, hitting that like button, subscribing to the channel. I know I sound like a broken record, but if you are listening to any content creators and influencers on any of these platforms, you know that it's the consistent reminder of the things that actually allow these channels to grow that the influencer or creator or narrator is always focusing on. So again, if you are someone who has found so much value in this work, chances are the new people that are coming in are finding Catalyst Energies because you have participated in some way in making sure this channel grows and reaches a wider audience. So thank you very much. So it's Monday. We're going to do the Starseed Ministry. I have a reading to share for you. There is some solar weather we're going to look at, and actually more like the lack of solar weather. Strangely enough, it not a lack of impact. I think it's important to make that distinction, but the lack of any outward type of ejection, almost literally, that would have been responsible for creating the type of impact we're going to look at. So very interesting. There have been a lot of earthquakes still. There's a lot of seismic activity. There's a lot of volcanic activity that isn't really getting super reported from the more official channels, I guess you could say, or the official sources, but there are a lot of eruptions that seem to be happening. So I'm going to focus a little bit on that today because, again, there is this underlying moving around that seems to be happening, this shifting, this letting off of pressure, this reorganization, and this alchemical fire that seems to be still moving quite a bit under the surface. We're going to have a first quarter moon on the third quarter moon, because we just had our full moon on the 7th here in Gemini. So third quarter moon in Virgo is going to be on the 16th, which is Friday. We have some pretty strong transits leading up to that. We have a Sun square Neptune, and for Neptune to be direct now in its home sign of Pisces, boy, this has the potential to dissolve every illusory, ego-oriented thing that we can imagine. This is a very difficult type of transit to get your shit together and to be focused on working and staying consistent and diligent and just getting swept up in the undertow. And there's a lot of possibility for deception. There's a lot of possibility for being hyper focused on the deception or the maybe healing issues. Hypochondria seems to come in a lot with a Sun square Neptune type of transit. And like I said, with Neptune in its home sign, you know, the Sun in Sag is great for optimistic sincerity of purpose, meaning, the narrative, the big picture, and really identifying with it. But it is, in fact, the identification with the alchemical process, what is created anew, and the meaning behind that, which is great. And for the Sun to be in Sagittarius any minute now, it's going to, in a number of days leading up to our solstice, it's going to pass over the galactic center. But there is something a-brewing when it comes to this Sun square Neptune. So we'll focus a little bit more on that as we go through today's transmission. So let us know how you're doing in the live chat. I'll pop over there and see how it's going so far. VZ, happy 336. I totally thought of that today as well in terms of the date, and it does break down to a 12 in terms of 12/12/2022. So that feels pretty Piscean to me. Hope everyone has a fantastic Monday. Thank you, and I hope you do as well. I know that is, for the most part, if you're following the calendar, you're going to come into the beginning of your week here, but either way, we are checking in on this 12 day with the Starseed ministry. I'm really feeling pretty good for the most part, and I can't say that's the same for everyone, but I do get a sense of some optimism. I get a sense of the tide turning. Of course, if you were paying attention out in the land of social media and what's been transpiring on that front, you will see some very obvious revelations and some real dissolution of the ego-based identity with what's going on in the Twitter land. So without getting too much into that, that's just something to pay attention to as we look at all these astrological factors. Mercury has been in Capricorn for a hot minute. Venus is now in Capricorn as well. And so our sense of satisfaction, comfortability, balance, beauty, harmony is very much crystallized in terms of what is the experience for all of us, in the social order, in the large extended family, in the materium itself. This is where Venus in her sensitivity is now really oriented, which is in some ways very mature. There's an ancient kind of grandmother energy, these deep, vast networks of roots, not the individual root system, but the way they all communicate with each other, the way they're all intertwined with each other. And if you've ever read the book, The Hidden Life of Trees, you know exactly what this references and what this is all about, because it is about the ecosystem as a whole. And Venus in Capricorn is the ecosystem as a whole, and the sensitivity to the balance of that ecosystem and what it requires in terms of our own ability to receive and our own nurturing and nourishment of those who have value to us. And I don't mean that in necessarily a strictly economic resource oriented way. And even if I did, there's still an importance to be able to assign a real true value to these relationships or these resources as something that is for the betterment of everyone involved. So like I said, that could have, depending on where Capricorn is in your chart, you may want to pay a little bit more attention to that now. Mercury, Venus, and then of course our solstice on the 21st into the 22nd is also going to be Capricorn time. And when we look at today's reading, we're going to see that this energy is pretty strong even right now. And even though we still have, a week or so, a week and some change until we get to just the solstice, we're going to see that the reading today is offering a template of a pattern that has to do with what is really identified, what kind of power we are identified with when the sun comes into 0 degrees Capricorn. So yes, it's the winter solstice. I try to be very aware that there is a southern hemisphere that is mirroring that experience, even though the sun is still in the sign of Capricorn, regardless of where you are on the planet. So the identification with some sort of social power, political power, even just identification with the ecosystem in itself, the materium of reality unfolding and following the pathway of that unfoldment is the cardinality of the Capricorn energy, and really just kind of sums up the energy of this time of year, regardless of what season you're going into, because what it represents is the peak and the valley concurrently, the full wave function itself of the relationship the planet has with the sun. So we're either coming into the darkest time in this winter, or the northern hemisphere, or the southern hemisphere is about to reach the summertime, where they are reaching peak and maximum saturation of light and are now preparing themselves to take that energy with them into what eventually be their own valley or bottom point of this bell curve of light. So it goes both ways. It's concurrent, it's mirroring things, and that has been a huge theme just in general at this point. So I want to really transition over to this solar weather and get started here on the things that seem, well, not seem, that they are very much where we are putting our feet on the ground, so to speak. So what I'd like to do here is bring our awareness, because like I said, and I'm sure if you're following your preferred channel about space weather, and it is proven to be consistent and giving you the information that you need, then you know that for the most part there may be plenty of instances where there can be a lot of intensity, and in some cases there is intensity. There is intense solar wind, but there's been an elevation into solar storm conditions over the last couple of days, especially since the full moon, where we had kind of this peak solar wind from a very large coronal hole, and it has been disturbing. But for the most part, the Schumann has, been fairly calm. But what you're seeing here now is between Saturday and today, so this is Russia time, so this is even last night into today, you can see that the Schumann is starting to move around and get very active. In fact, as we go through all of the graphs, you'll see that the quality at that same time has started to move around considerably when it had been pretty consistent over the last couple of days. It's moving around. The quality is in some sort of variability where it's shooting up and coming back down and just showing activity when it had been pretty mellow. So same thing with the amplitude. It hasn't gotten really loud, but you can see a very consistent movement in the amplitude and very coordinated in some ways as well. And especially in these two end points, these bookends between Sunday and Monday in terms of the amplitude, right? And what is that? That's the size of the wavelength of the electromagnetic field, and the Schumann resonance is giving us the frequency, the actual wave function itself of that electromagnetic field. So there's variability. It's changing in its volume. And what do we get? We get pink auroras very recently. So this has to do with the actual gaseous atoms and molecules in the atmosphere. So the plasma comes in and it not only impacts the magnetosphere, and in fact it impacts it impacts the plasma in the magnetosphere, but then it also starts to impact the ionosphere, which is a part of our multiple strata of our atmosphere. The ionosphere is what is able to indicate some sort of charged experience, right? And so when the plasma comes in, as many of you know, then the oxygen atoms reflect this green color, but pink auroras are indicative of that plasma or those charged particles getting much deeper into the atmosphere and reacting to the nitrogen molecules that are much deeper, closer towards the surface. And that's where you get these pink auroras, right? So there's this little coronal hole, right? It may be too far south of, and I got that this morning listening to Suspicious Observers, and I would have to agree, but who knows if we're going to get a huge impact from solar wind from that. That's something that's going to be as it turns into view. And you can see that, like I said, the planetary K index has been elevated, but not in storm conditions over the last day or so. And what you can find here is this is the 7th of the full moon that we had in Gemini. It was conjunct Mars, and it still showed some geomagnetic storm conditions, but has since started to taper off out of the yellow zone, and even today has tapered off considerably. And when that happens, we do have more possibility for cosmic rays to get in, which are much higher energy plasma, basically, or particles that are moving towards the speed of light and have an incredible amount of energy attached to it. So when the solar weather from our own sun is starting to taper off, this is where these cosmic rays have a chance to impact from deep space, right? Something beyond the solar system. So we get different types of information based on the different types of cosmic rays, solar rays, solar plasma, solar wind. It all all has different types of information that come along with it, which I think is really interesting. And you can even see here that the solar wind, the speed, the temperature, it's had a short up and down, but has also over the average remained fairly consistent. But you can see that there's a lot of impact on the magnetic field itself, right? And you can feel the bounce back and forth, back and forth. So something is certainly impacting the ionosphere and the magnetosphere enough to ripple it in order to impact and disturb it. But what is it? Because we're not getting a ton, the coronal hole is already past us and has settled down. And there are a lot of sunspots. There's no doubt about that as we look here. There's a lot of sunspot groups, but they're not flaring at us. And we're not getting any CMEs really. So what is it that is really having an impact on the magnetosphere itself? That's very interesting. And we go back to the Schumann again, and we see that something has elevated, something has changed, something has moved around. And of course, there was a big earthquake that you may have already known about in, let's see here. This was like a day or so ago. It's not even registering anymore as a 6-pointer in the last, because I think it was over 2 days ago. But I thought it was really recent that there was a 6-pointer in Mexico, and now it's not here on the chart. USGS, I don't know what they're doing, but there's some interesting things going on. The other thing I noticed is that if you do go look at volcanoes, you will see that there are a bunch up in Alaska that are on alert now, this whole Aleutian Islands chain, and you can see there's tons of seismic activity that's being reported. This is pretty substantial, a 4-pointer in the subduction zone off of Oregon. That's new. I didn't see that earlier this morning. That's a big deal as well, because anybody on the Pacific Northwest knows about this subduction zone and what it possibly entails. But there was a 6-pointer here in Mexico, and there are volcanoes in Chile that are erupting right now, although it's very difficult to get information directly from the USGS about that. They seem to not even care about what's going on down there. But there is active, they're looking at volcanoes in Alaska, they're looking at volcanoes back out here in Indonesia, in this area as well. So there are eyes on these things, and something is moving, okay? Something is certainly we're getting the message from the planet. Now, whether or not this is DEW and HARP, whether or not it is completely natural, honestly, at this point, I think when there are natural possibilities and natural conditions that are presenting themselves, I think that these are capitalized upon in order to have an impact. So I don't think it's just one and just the other. I think it's both of them together for... It could be a number of different things. But, there's some pretty consistent outcomes to some of this type of stuff. Obviously, weather is impacted, storms, obviously seismicity is impacted, volcanoes are impacted. You have major ionospheric disruption. You are going to have all kinds of grid problems. So I just think it's interesting that you can see that there is an uptick in what the Schumann is presenting, and you see all of these possibilities floating around, especially with 9 sunspot groups on the sun, but there isn't really anything right now that's currently disrupting. In fact, it's kind of calming down for a minute. So we're just going to have to stay on top of it and be observant, right? Be observant with your own cognitive functions, your own observational skill set. And in fact, as we get into the reading, which I'd like to do right now that we've looked at this, when we get into the reading, especially last week's reading into today, an open mind that is really interested in being able to freely be able to process information is going to be really important, and not in a way that is just driving you mad and leading you all over the place, as we're going to see with this, this review. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. This review of last week's reading, because there are some pretty obvious and very direct crossovers or linear progressions. Let's put it that way. So I want to make sure here. Megan is wide awake. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you being part of the live chat and certainly commenting no matter where you find yourself watching this video. So, remember this reading, right? We had the Prince of Swords, we had the Prince of Discs in its reversal, and then we had the Passion or Lust or Strength in some decks. And in the Thoth deck, this is number 11. And we do have our moon in Leo right now. And so when we start to transition more into the astrology, just to get an idea here, is that we are now starting to, I think, really feel the need for this combust energy and a place of release. And over the next 2 days, there's going to be some interesting transits that are going to, I think, allow for a direction, at least, for some of this energy to be brought forward and released. Because that's the thing about Leo. It's one thing to be combust, right? Just like the sun is combust in its own way, and it releases that energy into its own magnetosphere, out into the interplanetary magnetic field, and impacts all of the bodies that are part of this system. And so the release point will be coming into tomorrow, I think. And right now, the inner landscape, our ability to adapt, the lens that we have into our own soul, and being able to see it and experience it and have it illuminated is waning now since the full moon, but there's still this sense of passion, this sense of devotion, this sense of independence and freedom and sovereignty, which we are now feeling, I think, very strongly, which really brought us, from last week's reading to this time. Now I want you to look at the rest of this, right? You remember the chess game, the honeybee, this sense of setting our course in our mind and in our mental framework, and this idea of creating a space in which something new can come in. And yes, there was a lot of just bouncing around in terms of the space of our mind, and I think that full moon really put some things into perspective. And even with Mars in its retrograde, we still may have become aware of, wow, look at this feedback loop that I'm just spinning out on, and how to take that and put it into something cohesive and physical and material, I think has been a little bit of like, how do I do this? How do I make this transition from my thoughts into things? And I think that we are now in a place where we can start doing that. And the full moon, like I said, was that point of just like at least realizing, my gosh, like, look how much I am just wasting this energy or outputting my consciousness into a place that is not necessarily getting me anywhere. And it's our passion. It is our thrill. It's our excitement. It's our sovereign, heart-based resonance. And that doesn't have to necessarily be joy, although I would say that finding the joy in even the most sorrowful situations can be really helpful, but you don't ever want to suppress, what is natural for you in that moment. And some people, it is grief, and it is sorrow, and it is pain, and that's part of the human experience too. And those experiences are still combust and they still need to be released. And it's in this, the third quarter moon is going to be in Virgo. It's going to be opposite Neptune, actually. And so it will be a time leading up to then to really just genuinely feel into what is this unobstructive, devotional energy that we want to bring up and out. And that, like I said, it's been moving under the surface here for a while now. Since I'd say the new moon, and even leading up to it with the Mercury-Venus conjunction in Sagittarius. Now it is, finding the places to vent in some ways, but there is that power and that energy is still very much in the center of our experience. And right now we're feeling it and ready to release it. So just keep a look at this, and then we're going to bring up today's reading. Now, one of the things that I thought was really striking of course, is that we had a double causal factor. I mean, this has Capricorn energy written all over it. The Ace of Discs, right? The Ace of Pentacles, the seed of a physical manifestation, and the Emperor, which is represented by the Sun in Capricorn. So we have the Emperor, which is structure, which is leadership, which is the number 4. So this causal factor here that we are working with today's transmission, and the idea that heaven is within us, is the seed point is really already is already been released. That happened with Libra and Scorpio season, and of course Scorpio season was part of an eclipse cycle as well. So that takes us out to the equinox and beyond, right into April as well, and near Beltane. So the seed has already been planted. It is already viable. It is already here for the next cycle. Now, it's easy to get ahead of ourselves. We have to still be present with what has already transpired and solidified and will crystallize as a result of our own purpose together. And that's going to lead to an incredible amount of gain. We have the 9 of Discs as our outcome, right? Venus in Virgo. And at the center here, 6 of Swords. In the Thoth deck, it is science, right? It is the mind truly free in order to move in the directions that lead to balance, that lead to cohesion, that lead to almost perfection in some ways. And I would say at a collective sense. And here, look at this. Here's our chess game again, along with the honeybee, for forgiveness and compassion to be your top priority. And then speaking of the mind, we have Ascended Master Hilarion that is also here about concrete knowledge, logical action or logical mindset, of being able to detect actual evidence of truth, of research, of spirit communication as well. And so we'll go into that. So there is this sense now of really finding that center of real mental freedom, and what that actually means, what that actually entails. And when there is a sense of real structure and form and leadership, and the seed being viable already, and it is in this this opportunity to be not only mentally free, but not in the way of Gemini, where we're discovering new ideas. And certainly with Mars in its retrograde, it is acting on these areas in terms of objective clarification, right? Like really sharing our subjective experiences in order to find an objective point of it. But this is really much more about the ability to the mind unfolding all of its energies after some sort of emotional wound is healed. And so, yes, there's science, there's research, there's the search for truth. But even more than that, as the 6, is liberation through difficulties. Now, in the Rider-Waite deck, some of you are familiar with this, you know that 6 of Swords is a lot more melancholy in some ways, because it shows that the liberation has come through difficulties, and it's a search for truth, and there's a freedom here. But there is also this sense of sadness about it. And you don't get that at all. You get Mercury in Aquarius with the Thoth deck, and there is a detachment of all of the emotional difficulties that have come before in order for the mind to truly unfold. So I just want you to kind of see how we've managed to get to this point from where we've been, and that there are some really distinct crossovers of what was more under the surface last time or last week, which is now sitting right on the top of our awareness. And there's still this bit where we are not quite ready to fully walk away from the chess game. We're very much aware that there is political agenda at play in terms of what is building and growing and being manifested. But we're also not quite ready to fully walk away from it. That's what I see here. So let's start looking at this one piece at a time. I'll move over here and give you an opportunity to look at these symbols and these symbols and the archetypal vision, and image oriented vision, I should say, so that whatever comes out for you, because that's really what the tarot is meant to do. It's a tool that brings out what is inherently patterned within yourself. And I just love the crossover from last week. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? I mean, I guess I could. I guess you just have to trust that I didn't sit down and handpick all of this so that I can give a message that I want to give. I just think that this is incredibly favorable. And I have been feeling kind of under the surface that there is this quietness and this sense of really sinking into what is important and what has real value to us. And now that Venus is in Capricorn, we can really unfold with how that meaning crystallizes from a sense of purpose and that fire within to something substantial, something that we can actually put our feet on or touch, or gives us a sense of overall security. So the Ace of Discs is exactly what it sounds like. It is the beginning of something. It's a seed. It's a new path. It's an offer that drops out of the sky. It's a golden opportunity that is the beginning of something in the physical. So it is resource and financial, but it also can have to do with your health and your physical well-being as well. So, and your energy, your inherent energy, and of course the natural harmonics of the planet itself, because we are inseparable from that. So with the Emperor that came out with it, this, again, like I said, is represented by the Sun in Capricorn, or Aries, right? The beginning of the zodiac, because it all starts with that masculine output, right? The seed is viable and is embedded into the medium of growth, right? The sperm embeds itself into the ovum in order to create or invite in the spark of life. 4 is a basic structure, right? 4 is the square. 4 is the abstraction of establishment. So this is about stability and structure, a sense of law and order, right? And the structure of civilization. But it starts with this, parental type of energy, or this, intuitive, instinctual, masculine principle that is responsive and recognizes and is stable and realistic, right? This is pretty remarkable to have come out as our causal factor, right? And so maybe you haven't quite gotten here yet, but I would say that for those of us who are part of this reading today and receiving this transmission, however you find yourself to this content, I would say that that's because this is something that has already established itself well before the time of this reading, okay? That we have been actually bringing this seed forward. And like I said, Libra and Scorpio time is where the seed is revealed and released through relationship, but goes dormant, right? It has to embed itself in the regenerative process of Scorpio, right? As everything else around it dies and is the nurturing and the nutrition. It is the energy that will fuel this seed point later, but it's still very much here now. And there is a sense of stability and realism and structure and control that are very much going to infuse or act on or respond to whatever this new creation or this new opportunity that seems to drop out of the sky, okay? Now, what it seems to, and we'll look at the Emperor as well, you can see everything around the energy of this card has to do with creative principles, but it also has to do with the structure of how that comes into the structure of physical reality. So you can see that the 4 is generated by the way that the Emperor is sitting with the leg crossed over, the shield with the phoenix, the double phoenix, and the sun in the back, the lamb with the flag, right? The lamb, or Aries, the ram, right? The ram is a male sheep, and the lamb is the baby, right? You can even see the fleur de lis down here in this picture. And you got all kinds of spheres. You have the rams in the background. Of course, the emperor with the crown, with the staff, with the ram's head, holding the globe in the hand as well. So there's this sense of responsibility and law and order and being able to hold the totality of this seed point or this physical creation. And this is the healthy masculine in all of us that, again, it is the Aries energy. It is the responsiveness and the spark of life that comes through. And it is the sun in Capricorn. It is power and a power to organize and structure this creative potential. Okay, so this is where the causal factor coming into a moment here of pure mental freedom. Okay, and this is Mercury in the second decan or the second 10 degrees of Aquarius. Okay, and what's there? Saturn. Saturn is just coming out of that second decan and is coming into the third decan of Aquarius. And in fact, the moon in Libra or Leo, the moon in Leo today will be opposite. It will be in a trine to the moon, to the sun. Ooh, I love sun moon trines. This is a great day for that and into tomorrow. With the moon in Leo, it certainly is going to give us a sense of what our spiritual purpose is in that moment, that trine to the sun in Sagittarius. Specifically, there's Mintaka vibes all over today's astrology, as I'm going to point out when we look at the chart. So if you know you're a Mintakan starseed, these are Orion starseeds, but it's very particular to the star of Mintaka, which is on the belt of Orion at 22 degrees Gemini. So getting into Aquarius and which is in a trine to this, but and Leo is in a sextile, so these are all very much connected to Mintaka, but the sun will be opposite. So we'll go into a little bit of that. That's going to be something I cover in way more detail for monthly subscribers when I create and post the weekly astrology report for those folks who are monthly subscribers through Subscribestar. So if you're interested in that, and there will be information that pops up on social media and certainly on the community tab here on YouTube. So, but this Mercury in Aquarius, I mean, this is freedom of the mind and freedom that is coming out of the difficulties, liberation through the difficulties. What is the Five of Swords? It's defeat, right? It's that sensitivity of Venus meeting the futility in some ways of Aquarius, where it is all one resonance and you know yourself within that resonance. But this is liberation that comes from some sort of sensitivity to the reality of the situation. But this is coming out of it with healed emotional wounds, right? The mind can unfold in all of its energies, in all of its directions for the search for truth, through science, through research. And this is success after a lot of anxiety, okay? This is at the heart of the matter. And so I do get this sense also today with the moon opposite Saturn, the Leo Aquarius axis, this whole thing that I'll talk about a little bit. But this is a mental freedom to go in any direction and to truly search for truth without the encumberment of all of the emotional difficulties, and certainly this sense of seed creation already being planted, and the energy of the structure and stability and the masculine energy and the power of the emperor being involved as well. It's like this has already been put into place, and it has all of the stability surrounding it, so that at the heart of it, we can really actually search for truth, that we can, be able to detect the actual evidence of what is going on around us and what the actual agenda is, because there's a lot to be gathered here, right? There's a very successful healing, convalescence, and a real satisfaction with what we have gained coming into the next couple days specifically. Now, the moon in a square to the sun on the 16th, which is Friday, right? The Virgo moon. Okay, we want to have a satisfied sense of gain with what we are willing to investigate, into our search for truth. And the search for truth and creation is really just a transformation, because all of this is truly already here. And I feel like this Ace of Discs and even the Emperor is what is leading us to that. It's already here. The template is already set. There is, it's just a matter of resonating and aligning with it, or being dissonant with it, or being resonant with something that looks like it, but is not actually. It is some other version. It is some sort of offshoot that is a false hologram. So this is going to be part of the Sun square Neptune is really going to kick this into gear, right? It's so simple and easy to get pulled into all of these false narratives, and certainly with a Sun in Sagittarius and where we're headed, and assimilating to that new territory, and just completely losing yourself in that process. Boy, it is really powerful. So right now, we do need an open mind. We do need a sense of real research and a search for truth and a liberation after a lot of emotional difficulty, after some serious questioning of our own value and self-worth. Now, Mercury is going to be in a square to Chiron tomorrow. So that wounding is going to be definitely brought up as we start this investigation of how this has all been brought together before and how it can unfold differently this time. Science, right? Science. God, what a loaded term at this point. Now, this is just amazing. So the One of Forces. I also see the One in the Akashic deck as the Ace card as well. And so now you have another Ace, another seed point. And this is a seed point of fire, of action, of transmutation, of creativity. And as we all know, or maybe you're not familiar with the Akashic field, the idea here is that everything that ever has and ever will be exists in this field of potential. And this is at the root. This seed point of transformation, of creation, of force is at the root of where we are right now energetically. So opportunities abound, right? How this seed actually grows and the quality of that growth, what it grows into, is all in front of us right now. So our personal life resonates with the universe and this Akashic field. And again, we've talked about this, our thoughts are the our conscious energy is what is really resonating in either harmonizing or being dissonant with this field. And it is harmonizing with an experience in this Akashic field that is going to come to us, right? And become part of our awareness. So it's important that we engage in this with conscious focus again. And at the heart of it, we do have conscious focus. We have science. We have Mercury in Aquarius. We have liberation after struggle. We have a search for truth that is at the heart, and knowing that that field is going to respond to us at the subconscious level and have an impact on the direction and the trajectory of our unconscious thoughts. Okay. And when we look at the guidance around this, we're going to see how important balance is and what we can do to reinforce that, to maybe continue to find balance or take action that will allow balance within ourselves in order to then achieve balance outside of ourselves. But this chess game, and this is exactly how it came out, was in this position horizontally. So we are very aware at this point now what the game is, the agendas, the political, the social conflict. And this is either in our families, this is in our personal life, this is within our spiritual journey, and certainly in the macro. Okay, so we're aware. We know that there's this chess game happening. We know that we may be a pawn or more than a pawn. We know that we may be the chessboard itself. We may be watching the game, eating our popcorn. We know that it's a game. But I feel like that there's this something that's holding us here that we're not quite ready to walk away entirely and just give up. But there is an emotional gap now that we don't necessarily have to engage in, right? Again, Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn rules the chessboard in so many ways, and all of the structure that makes up the chess game, all of the rules, all of the ways that the pieces can move on the board, right? And then everything within that is the result of individual decision and action in relation to each other, right? So there's something here we're not fully ready to walk away from yet, and maybe we're not supposed to necessarily walk away from. It's just about becoming aware of the game and maybe detaching even a little bit more. So Saturn in Aquarius can let us detach a little bit more and to be resonant with the consciousness as a whole, as opposed to all of the pathways and strategies in terms of this game. The honeybee that comes out here along with this is incredible. So we'll get to that. But the outcome here, the effect of all of these pieces together is again a satisfied gathering in of everything that we have been working towards, right? Virgo is the fruits of our labor. It is maturity, it is fruition, and it comes from work. It comes not from wishing, and certainly its opposite of Pisces is the imagination that allows us to bring a new creative potential online, Aries, but in order to bring it about in ourself and offer it into the social context, we have to work at it, right? And this is about the root system, drawing the resources out of the soil in order to influence the growing fruit. The fruit has the seed, right? Not necessarily all the vegetative growth or the leaves or even the flowers. They're so beautiful, and that's a very Leo-oriented symbol, is the flowering of and blossoming of ourselves. That's something that we're feeling into right now with the moon in Leo. It's the actual work that we do to bring it into reality that Virgo represents. And this third quarter moon on the 16th in a square, of course, to the sun is a crisis in consciousness. And we want to reorganize ourselves internally so that we can take what we have learned and felt and become aware of and illumined by, I should say, with the full moon in Gemini, and then take that and analyze, okay, emotionally, in our own astral field, in our own hygienic practices energetically, in our own healing processes, our self-care, our labors, our works, our routines that we put into place, right? We want to be able to gather this in and be satisfied. And I feel like that there is an incredible amount of satisfaction, of gain that we can experience here. Okay. But this requires that we stay very consciously focused on what it is that is going to be brought out of this field of potential at the root of us right now. So let's look at that balance, the seven of forces, right? Remembering that justice and reciprocity are energetic experiences, that the two sides of the scales are balanced in relation to what is put on them and is something that we have to feel and look at in a way that is objective. But there's also the light pouring into this room because the door is open. And this sense that there could be, the 7 is that divine number of the fall from grace actually being our divine opportunity. And so maybe something does change. Maybe there is movement in some sort of legal issue or some sort of issue of balance in relationships. But I would say at the root level here and in our subconscious, this is saying that we want our subconscious to have this balanced approach to our creative energy, to have a sense of balance, because this is where we will bring forward that new creative potential out of the field of the Akashic records, right? Whatever that is for us. And the Kiwi is a bird on the ground. So this is about bringing that spiritual perspective back down to the ground and putting one foot in front of the other and intentionally doing so. It brings balance to both sides of your brain, both hemispheres, right? Both sides of your body. And walking requires a cooperation with both sides, back and forth, right? So our spiritual, transcendent aspect, being, especially in terms of our subconscious, we have to practice this. We have to bring it into a practice of some sort, right? We can't just wish for it. It has to be something we put our actual time and energy and initiative into. And this really does, to me, speak to the need to continue this process in our subconscious, because the field is so present right now, and the creative potential and the crystallization that is that comes forward with, this December solstice time is really, really strong. So if you feel the need to implement something, right, whatever it is, and this, I think, will become really apparent as the moon starts moving through Virgo in the next couple days, kind of like midweek into the end of the week. The moon will move into Virgo, and this will be like, okay, where am I energetically? Where is my psychic and intuitive hygiene? Where's my astral hygiene? How do I achieve balance in my own subconscious so that I am fully intending of what comes forward, and through this clear channel of the search for truth, okay? And the truth about yourself, the truth about your relationships, the truth about society, right? The truth about your spiritual connection. All of these things could fit under it. But the kiwi, the bird on the ground, is really important to bring that perspective down to reality. And again, the Emperor is going to bring it down to reality. And again, the Sun square Neptune, now that it's direct, boy, if it's not down to reality by the time that happens, it may be very difficult to get out of our own, the way of the deluge spiritually, and the collective unconscious just like washing us away. It's possible. It's also possible. There's not a lot of good that comes out of a Sun square Neptune, especially with Neptune in Pisces like this, other than being aware of your pitfalls at this point. And the fact that the Neptune is now direct makes it even harder. Had this happened with Neptune still in its retrograde, it may have been a little bit more of a insight into how we could be pulled into these spheres. But it's a little bit harder now to get out of. Like, we're already on the boat going to the new world, right? The seed has, it's dropping out of the sky already, right? This new opportunity, and we're on our way. But if we don't allow for our own inner integrity to still remain intact as we go into this new sphere, this is where the Sun square Neptune gets pulled into our vital forces, just getting really weakened and getting pulled into all of these false narratives, I would say, about where we're going, or feeling trapped, or feeling like, oh shit, what have I done? Do I really want to do this? Or do I have what it takes to maintain my inner integrity? And let me tell you, asteroid Vesta is in a degree up in Pisces today, and will be probably the next couple of days. That is absolutely about this. So know that the fire at the center of all of our souls, and that holds us all together, is really in a position of what, the discernment, but specifically our conscience, right? Our conscience is what holds us all together. Okay. So, this is going to be really useful when we talk about, keeping a really open mind right now. Honeybee, let compassion and forgiveness be your top priority, right? Even if you know that it's all a chess game, even if you're still kind of watching the match and eating your popcorn, even if you have feelings about what all of this is and how other people around you may have responded to this chess game, where they're at in it, maybe they're trapped in it still. Compassion and forgiveness. All of this Pisces energy is very strong right now. Jupiter's still in Pisces. Neptune is direct in Pisces. Vesta, like I said, is in Pisces, opposite Draco, by the way. And Juno, asteroid Juno, is also in Pisces. And there's some pretty strong Lyran activation around this right now as well. So that's coming into view as well. So, but the Pisces energy is, and the 12th house is where compassion and forgiveness for ourselves and for everything is so much easier, and more accessible. So whatever this is, for us, it's a really strong message because it came from last week down in the subconscious and is now absolutely focused on our conscious awareness right now. And then we have the Ascended Master Hilarion, number 5, right? The bottom of the curve, so to speak, and he represents she's the Ascended Master of logical approach, of evidence detection, concrete knowledge, spirit communication, truth, healing, logical mind. And this is about bringing a logical approach. And I would say a logical approach to the fact that we've all been caught in the net of this political agenda, whatever, you identify it as. And so having compassion for yourself, my gosh, it's okay if you're like, wow, I totally was caught up in that. And it, led me to a dead end in terms of what I know or what I think I know. And Mars in its retrograde right now, what a great asset, even though it's retrograde, is to having us act in this way to really look for objective confirmation of what we've been experiencing and being willing to hold space for ourselves and other people when we are like, now my evidence detection and my logical approach has taken me to a point where I was like, wow, that may actually not be true, or that is not true. And how do I rectify this? And I think being compassionate and forgiving across the board right now, and how this entire experience is kind of leading us all together into an awakening in some ways, right? It's such an overused concept at this point that the ascension and awakening, I kind of steer away from it right now. Not to say that it's not happening or important or anything. It's just that it's a buzzword, a series of buzzwords. So, but there is this awakening kind of potential right in this moment, as we are getting close to the solstice, that when you keep compassion and forgiveness as your top priority, you are still invested in the health, the wellness, and the commerce of the entire collective from a spiritual level. And that's what we're really here for, not to get caught up in the chess game. Chess game is great, right? Whatever, well, maybe if you're the one holding up the chessboard, it's not so great. But if you are, if you got out from under it and you're like, here, at least I'm watching the chessboard and paying attention to the game and learning from the strategies that I'm watching unfold, that's something as well. There's a lot of potential gain here. I mean, clearly the 9 of discs at a very material level, and it's going to require that we are very intentional about what we are resonating and harmonizing within ourselves in order to attract this type of satisfaction and material gain in a positive way, or healing gains, or successful convalescence coming forward, or something to look forward to. There's a lot to look forward to in this reading, but it also gives us the guidance around it to not get lost in it, but to be very intentional and aware, and to stay on task, right? To keep staying on the things that continually bring you into a sense of balance. And so heaven is within us, right? But if it's with it being either projected or released out into the the medium, right? And certainly being brought into physical form does require that we are still invested in that process, and that we don't just give up because we see some gains somewhere, okay? So really, really great reading. I'm curious to see how people are feeling and what their response to that is, because I know it's been, kind of hard, I think, with a lot of people just lately. So, and I can see that in many ways for people. So let's look at the chart here and just kind of get an idea of what to expect very generally for this upcoming week. Like I said, I'll be sharing the weekly astrology report for the monthly subscribers, and we go into much more detail about the starseed origins, about fixed star astrology and constellations, and everything in much more detail, and do more of an astrological reading in and of itself. So let's look at this chart. So you can see that there's a lot of connections here, but there's not a whole lot going on. So today, the sun is in a sextile to Saturn. And this is one of those fake it till you make it type of connections here, where a sextile, again, is like this ability to capitalize or transmute or transform in a harmonious way, right? The air and the fire energy, just like the oxygen comes in and feeds the fire, or when you are starting a campfire or a fire in your fireplace, you blow or you use the bellows to blow on the fire and it spreads it. Same thing here with fire and air, with the Aquarian and Sagittarius energy. Sextile showing that there is something to be gained here. There's something to, there's a harmony that we can experience with these energies, but there requires a participation. Something has to be invested. They have to take an action here. And this is why I say it's a fake it till you make it type of energy, because Saturn in Aquarius is very much setting us up for the next couple of weeks to really need to find some resilience under adversity. And there's nothing playful or make-believe about Saturn at all, okay? It's very much the seriousness and the stability of that emperor, but in the collective consciousness rather than the physical power structures that it usually represents. And so I think this is kind of a fake it till you make it, right? That there is a need to practice what it actually means to face up to disappointing situations. We may feel disillusionment. We may feel, especially the Sun square Neptune this week, we may feel disillusionment. We may be losing our vitalistic energies as a result of that, and that's where the Sun comes in. But in this moment, there is something here that allows us to identify with that imitation, right? Like playing, like make-believe, like the medicine man puts on the mask of the deity and during the ritual becomes the deity and offers the healing through a transpersonal way. This is where this vitalistic energy can be tapped, and we can find a way to invest this energy into a much more serious and sober and very intense reality check in terms of facing up to disappointment, okay? And when the moon comes into an opposition with Saturn, at the very same time as we're going to see, we'll have a trine with the sun. And this is going to be about our own vitalistic forces, our feelings that are related to our sovereignty, our voice, our joy, our thrill, our optimism, taking risks creatively. That's a big part of Leo and the fifth house, being the center of our own experience. And much like the sun is, the center of this system, or at least so far as we know, and the heart of the lion, right? That's real courage and passion coming forward. And this is about feeling it. This is about how that the lens allows us to see that part of ourselves on the inside that normally we would not be able to see without the light of the sun. So let's look at this for a minute. Like I said, fake it till you make it, guys. That is the nature of that Sun sextile Saturn. And maybe you just have to put on that face for today in order to make it through, or to realize that thoughts create things, yes, but where do those thoughts get their energy? Well, they get them from, your inner life, your subconscious, right? The power that you have access to within yourself. And as the moon crossed through Cancer over the weekend, there was a lot of access to that, right? The waters of our own soul through our own root system. that allows us to blossom, right? So as we go, this is coming into tomorrow, the 13th. So I really do want to take some time to show this to you just generally. And like I said, the weekly astrology report that's for the subscribers is going to be way more in depth with this. But I just want to show you this tomorrow, that that there could be even more of a eruption of erratic energy, like an emotional upheaval that's like a spontaneous kundalini awakening that is going to maybe come up through us, and again, there's a real need to find a release point, especially when Saturn opposite is like, no, put on your big kid pants here, and you have to face up to what this adversity is, instead of just exploding, or just letting this energy like come barreling up and out, and maybe doing some damage, certainly having a negative release point. But it's this trine over to the sun in Sagittarius that is where that polarity within ourselves, especially two fire signs, is going to be able to find some balance and connection to each other. And 21 to 20, so there's a lot of Mintakan energy, like I said, around this. So Mintakan starseeds, this is going to be something we talk a lot about in the weekly astrology report. But which is an Orion starseed origin, okay? So this trine to the sun at 22 degrees Sagittarius, which is exactly direct of Mintaka, is at first going to seem counterintuitive, because the Mintakan signature has a lot to do with being able to organically dance with the duality. They are one of the few Orion starseed origin points that so far that I have found that have they have managed to figure out how to dance with the duality, how to dance with life, dance with their own opposition. And this has a lot to do, I think, with the fact that the main world around the star of Mintaka, whether it's literal and exoteric for you, or this is a frequency that is an esoteric experience along the spiritual hierarchies, this Mintakan resonance is connected to this water world, right? And it's in the medium of water that it's so easy to kind of have this seamless transition, like the Pisces fish. But it's with ideas, it's with concepts, it's with things that seem to be diametrically opposed, and finding that as a dancing partner is something the Mintakan and Mintakan starseeds have had really mastered. The thing is coming into this experience here on Earth has been a huge struggle for many Mintakan, especially if you have this 22 Sagittarius. You find yourself secluding yourself and pulling in, and it's out of survival in some ways, of containing yourself within a small group of people that make sense to you. But that doesn't mean that there's not a way to prosper in this environment. And I think that that's going to be a big message coming into tomorrow, with this trine with the moon and the sun, which is that you may not necessarily identify entirely with the world outside of you, and you may find yourself kind of in this seclusion, or even identifying with this small group of people that share these traits with you. These starseed traits, right? These spiritual traits, this sense of purpose, right? The sense of purpose may be carrying the message. You may not be fully engaged with the world outside of you. You may not be absolutely 100% giving yourself over to the paradigm or the narrative, but there's something within you, a spiritual message, a meaning, a mission that you will feel about being here that is really going to fulfill that vitalistic energy with the sun in Sagittarius. And maybe it will be reinforcing that connection with each other. And through your connection with each other, you are able to deliver some sort of message, some sort of spiritual purpose that you really feel. That way, there is something to balance out, or a fulcrum to be found here in this opposition, so it doesn't just feel like everything is about all of this disillusionment or disappointment, and how to face it, right? I mean, that can get really old really quick. When you're just like, is it seriously just all shit all the time, so that I am like building up a callus? And I mean, Saturn would say like, well, this is just the reality check, right? It's very much like dad putting the foot down, and Leo and the sun both being very childlike, not necessarily immature, but very playful, very heart-centered, very especially with the sun and Leo, very ego-centered. And that doesn't have to be negative. The ego is the thing that allows us to survive in this experience. So the inner child, if you want to think about it that way, the part of ourselves that is the center of our experience, all of those things are the antithesis in a lot of ways of the reality check of Saturn. But it also leads to this, without these things, this sense of purpose, this transformative creative potential, right? Without this resonance in our own hearts and our devotion, there is no crystallization into a structure and a stable form. So even if we are facing adversity, we are developing resilience. So, but the potential here coming into tomorrow, I think, is just like, that spontaneous Kundalini awakening that either is ecstatic, but you're out of touch with the reality, or it is such an expulsion of grief and sorrow that you don't know how you are going to actually face this disillusionment. Finding that place where you do belong, and that special part of you that actually allows you to thrive in the world around you, is where you can really find yourself. So if you're a Mintak and Starseed, I see a lot of my clients have 22 Sag in their chart somewhere. This is about it's not as easy necessarily we don't live on a water world, right? We're not in a natural environment that allows us necessarily to find that organic rebuilding. But we can do that with each other, and we can find that place within that zone, that secure or containment, or that security in some ways, that allows us to, at the very least, pull together and come to understand our own role within this context. It may not be fully engaged, like I said, but we do have a message here, and I think this is going to be a real good. Like I said, I love the sun trine the moon, right? It really does help balance us, and that goes back to that Kiwi again, right? And the one of forces, the seven of forces. The forces are fire, right? And you see that this is a fire trine, okay? But we do need to have 2 feet on the ground and a reality check of what's going on, and not get caught up in the fantasy and the escapism that is surely going to possibly just sweep a lot of people away with the Sun square Neptune, right? It's really, your vital energy gets zapped away, and it's very difficult to not have that happen. So, not to scare anybody, I'm just letting you know that you may see this in a larger scale, or you may experience it somewhere in your life. And that moon in Virgo by the end of the week is going to be very useful into being like, okay, what do I need to do to get my inner shit together right now, so that I am not pulled entirely away into substantiating someone else's agenda, okay? So, man, I think that's all I have for you guys. I'm going to pop in with the stream here and see if anybody has anything to offer. Megan says, there's been sleep issues for my whole family, especially last night. Overall, feeling very peaceful and optimistic. Christmas makes me happy, and I'm embracing it. That's exactly how I feel, actually. I've just been really really engaged in any kind of content or experiences about making the most of Christmas. And I did post that Manly P. Hall lecture about kind of getting back to the roots of this time of year and making the most of it. And I think that that's really so valuable right now. And I find I'm also very peaceful and optimistic as well. And sleep has just been a thing, right? And I think that if you go back and you look at the Schumann, you can see that the reverberations probably have been having a real impact on people's sleep issues just in general. I know for me, it's been very vibrant and very visceral in terms of my dreamscape. And there has been a little bit of just not being able to sleep super well, but I feel good otherwise, just kind of rolling with it, right? So we'll see how things unfold as we go along. Now, like I said, Mercury is going to be in a square to Chiron this week, so that and come into a connection with the nodal axis of the moon. So that's all going to be covered in the weekly astrology report for the subscribers. So a couple things I want to share. I should have just done it before I was finished because, if you don't want to listen to my promotional stuff, you'll just click off right now and then you'll miss all the things that I'm offering. So, whoops. We're going to do this. So one of the things is I have on my website, I now have the forecast for the solstice to the equinox called crystallization. This is the passageway into the Newgrange. If you're familiar with Newgrange in Ireland, this is the winter solstice sun coming through at the time of the solstice at Newgrange. So a lot of these stone circles, pyramids, these types of natural, very old stone monuments are a lot of times solar calendars, and they are representing these cardinal points of the year of the equinox and the solstice. So this is Newgrange, but I am offering now the seasonal forecast. So the December solstice out to the vernal equinox, it's $99. It's a 90-minute recording. If you are a paying member through Subscribestar, you have your promo code, so you get 10% off. So this is up on the website. You can book directly from there if you are interested. And certainly I will be putting it out on social media as well. And the other thing I wanted to share with you guys is that I actually have gift cards available now on my website as well. Digital gift cards that you can purchase and send to whoever you want. They have varying amounts from $33 up to $144, and that's something that you can purchase directly through the store on my website, catalystenergies.net. That's all in the description box below. So this is always a great gift, and they don't expire until next year at the solstice. And so that's something that is available now. And I am going to be putting out publicity content for my gift exchange today. So if you're not on social media, if you're not on YouTube and have access to the community tabs, and you're not on my my mailing list through my website, you may want to consider that so you can get the full experience of the gift exchange, because I just don't have the material to post it on this video right now. So, and of course, the Catalyst Classroom, we're going to be covering the moon in our next batch of sessions, and the first session will be released by the end of this week, looking at all of the astronomical aspects of our moon and all of the material aspects, science-oriented, all of that stuff is going to be available for the Catalyst Classroom. So if you're interested in that, you can get more information down below, my friends. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Thank you for being here. Make sure that you subscribe, you hit the like button, you comment, you share. All of those things make a big difference to this channel, reaching a wider audience. So if you are a regular viewer and you get a lot of value out of this content, you haven't subscribed, you're not in the process or the routine of hitting that like button, please consider doing so. It really does mean a lot, and it takes nothing to hit that button. So, my friends, happiness lies within, and so does heaven. And I'm going to sign off now because it sounds like my voice is very much shot. So thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so much. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other the best you can. I'll see you next week for the Starseed Ministry. Take care. Bye.